1. We've got a real classic on our hands, a 1985 Ford Mustang that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This silver beauty is a coupe with a clean title and just 85,663 miles on the odometer. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 8-cylinder engine that's ready to roar. Now I've got to be straight with you. The seller hasn't provided a ton of details about the condition of this Mustang. They've listed it as a classic, which could mean it's in great shape for its age, or it could be a polite way of saying it needs some TLC. Without seeing more photos or getting a closer look, it's tough to say for sure. But here's what we do know. This 85 Mustang has a clean title, which is always a good sign. It's got a reasonable number of miles for its age, so it hasn't been driven to the moon and back. And with that 8-cylinder engine, you can bet it's got plenty of power to have some fun on the road. The asking price of $14,995 might seem a bit steep at first glance, but it's not unheard of for a classic Mustang in good condition. If this car has been well maintained and doesn't need major repairs, it could be a fair price for a piece of American muscle car history. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to do your due diligence. Get a thorough inspection from a trusted mechanic, take it for a test drive, and make sure all the paperwork checks out before you hand over any cash. All in all, this 1985 Ford Mustang could be a sweet ride for the right buyer. It's got the classic looks, the powerful engine, and the potential to be a real head-turner on the road. Just be sure to do your homework and make an informed decision before you pull the trigger. 2. We're diving into the world of classic American muscle with this 1968 Pontiac Lehman's that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This gas-powered beauty has just 72,538 miles on the odometer and comes with a clean title, which is always a good sign. Under the hood, you'll find a beefy 350 V8 engine that's paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission. The seller claims it runs and drives great, which is exactly what you want to hear when you're looking at a car that's over half a century old. Now, let's talk about the condition. The seller is upfront about the fact that this Lehman's isn't perfect. They mention that there's some minimal rust on the floor pans, but they're quick to point out that there's no cancer, which is a term used to describe more severe rust damage. This is a good sign that the car has been relatively well maintained over the years. The seller also emphasizes that this is a solid car overall. They're not trying to pass it off as a showroom-quality vehicle, but rather a great running and driving classic that has plenty of life left in it. As for the price, $8,000 seems pretty reasonable for a 68 Lehman's in this condition. These cars have a loyal following among collectors and enthusiasts, and finding one with a clean title and no major rust issues is definitely a plus. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to do your due diligence. Get a thorough inspection from a trusted mechanic, take it for a test drive, and make sure all the paperwork checks out before you make an offer. One thing to note, the seller is pretty adamant about not wanting to entertain any trades, and they're urging potential buyers not to waste their time if the car is still available. This suggests that they're serious about selling and aren't interested in any lowball offers or tire kickers. All in all, this 1968 Pontiac Lehman's seems like a solid choice for anyone in the market for a classic American muscle car. It's got a strong V8 engine, a clean title, and a relatively low number of miles for its age. While it may not be perfect, it seems like a great running and driving car that could be a lot of fun to own and enjoy. Just be sure to do your homework and make an informed decision before you pull the trigger. 3. We're taking a closer look at a 1965 Buick Skylark that's up for sale on Craigslist. This classic coupe is powered by a 350 motor and comes with a manual 3-speed transmission, also known as a 3 on the tree. The seller is asking $5,000 or best offer, which could be a great deal for the right buyer. Now let's talk about the condition of this Skylark. The seller has listed it as fair, which suggests that it's not in perfect shape. They mention that it needs restoration, so it's important to keep in mind that this is a project car. You'll likely need to invest some time and money to get it back to its former glory. The seller also notes that the customer who originally brought the car in for a rebuild can no longer afford the work. This means that you could be getting a solid starting point for a restoration project at a reasonable price. On the plus side, the seller claims that the 350 motor runs well, which is a good sign. They also mention that the car has a clean title on hand, so you shouldn't have to worry about any legal issues with ownership. As for the specifics, this Skylark has racked up 127,324 miles over the years, which is not unusual for a car of this age. It's a rear-wheel drive vehicle with a custom paint color, which could be a selling point if you're into unique looks. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to do your due diligence. Given the age and condition of this Skylark, it's especially important to get a thorough inspection from a trusted mechanic before making an offer. You'll want to know exactly what you're getting into in terms of any necessary repairs or upgrades. One thing to keep in mind is that the seller is motivated to move this car out of their shop. They're encouraging potential buyers to make a respectable offer, so there may be some room for negotiation on the price. All in all, this 1965 Buick Skylark could be a great project car for someone who's willing to put in the work. It's got a strong motor, a clean title, and a classic look that's sure to turn heads. Just be sure to go into the purchase with your eyes open and a realistic understanding of what it will take to get this car back to its former glory. If you're up for the challenge, this could be a rewarding investment in a piece of American automotive history. 4. We've got a real treat for you. A 1967 Cadillac DeVille that's up for sale on Craigslist. This classic beauty is being offered for $10,000, and based on the seller's description, it sounds like it could be a real gem. First off, let's talk about the condition of this DeVille. The seller has listed it as excellent, which is always a good sign. They mention that the car has been completely redone inside and out, with new upholstery, seats, and dash. That's a big plus, as the interior of a classic car can often be one of the most challenging and expensive parts to restore. The seller also notes that there's no rust or body damage on this DeVille, which is another huge selling point. Rust can be a real killer for classic cars, especially those from the 60s and 70s. So finding one that's been well maintained in this regard is definitely a win. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 8-cylinder engine that's sure to provide plenty of smooth classic Cadillac performance. The transmission is automatic, which is par for the course for a car of this era and style. One thing that really stands out about this DeVille is the low mileage. The odometer shows just 44,000 miles, which is incredibly low for a car that's over half a century old. Of course, it's always a good idea to verify the accuracy of the mileage with documentation if possible, but if it's true, this car has been very lightly used over the years. The seller also mentions that they have the title in hand, which is always a good thing. A clean title means that there shouldn't be any legal issues with ownership or registration. As for the price, $10,000 might seem a bit steep at first glance, but it's actually not unreasonable for a classic Cadillac in excellent condition with low mileage. These cars have a loyal following among collectors and enthusiasts, and finding one that's been so well maintained is definitely a plus. Of course, as with any used car purchase, it's always a good idea to do your due diligence. Even if the car looks great in photos, it's important to see it in person. Get a thorough inspection from a trusted mechanic and make sure all the paperwork checks out before you make an offer. 5. We've got a real classic up for grabs on Craigslist. A 1965 Buick Skylark that's just begging for a new owner to give it some love. The seller is asking $3,500 for this vintage beauty, which could be a steal if you're willing to put in some work. First off, let's talk about the condition of this Skylark. The seller has listed it as good, but they also mention that it needs restoration. This suggests that while the car may be complete and relatively solid, it's not in perfect shape. It's important to keep in mind that this is a project car, and you'll likely need to invest some time and money to get it back to its former glory. That being said, there are some definite positives to this Skylark. The seller notes that it has a clean title, which is always a good sign. They also mention that the car was running when it was parked, which suggests that the engine and mechanical components may be in decent shape. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 8-cylinder engine that's sure to provide plenty of classic American muscle. The transmission is automatic, which is par for the course for a car of this era and style. And with rear-wheel drive, this Skylark is sure to be a blast to drive once it's back on the road. One really cool feature of this car is that it comes with the original wheel covers and black license plates. These vintage details can be hard to find and really add to the overall classic look of the car. As for the specifics, the odometer shows just 25,517 miles, which is incredibly low for a car that's over half a century old. Of course, it's always a good idea to verify the accuracy of the mileage with documentation if possible. But if it's true, this car has been very lightly used over the years. The seller also mentions that the price is negotiable, which suggests that there may be some room for bargaining. They're also upfront about the fact that they have too many projects and need to let this one go, which could work in your favor if you're serious about buying. 6. We've got a real blast from the past on our hands. A 1984 Pontiac Trans Am that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This classic American muscle car is being offered for $10,000 or best offer, and based on the seller's description, it sounds like it could be a real gem. First off, let's talk about the condition of this Trans Am. The seller doesn't explicitly state the overall condition, but they do mention that it runs, drives, and looks excellent. This suggests that the car is in pretty good shape, both mechanically and cosmetically. Of course, it's always a good idea to see the car in person and get a thorough inspection before making an offer, but this is definitely a promising start. One of the standout features of this Trans Am is the low mileage. With just 54,000 miles on the odometer, this car has been lightly used over the years. For a vehicle that's almost 40 years old, that's pretty impressive. Of course, it's always a good idea to verify the accuracy of the mileage with documentation if possible, but if it checks out, this could be a real selling point. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful V8 engine that's sure to provide plenty of classic American muscle. The transmission is automatic, which may not be the preference for some hardcore enthusiasts, but it's a common choice for cars of this era and can still be a lot of fun to drive. Another cool feature of this Trans Am is the T-tops. These removable roof panels were a signature feature of the Trans Am and other GM sports cars of the era, and they really add to the overall look and feel of the car. There's nothing quite like cruising down the road with the wind in your hair and the sun on your face. The seller also mentions that the car has a clean title, which is always a good sign. A clean title means that there shouldn't be any legal issues with ownership or registration. As for the price, $10,000 or best offer might seem a bit steep at first glance, but it's actually not unreasonable for a classic Trans Am in good condition with low mileage. These cars have a loyal following among collectors and enthusiasts, and finding one that's been well maintained is definitely a plus. 7. I've got a real treat for you today, a 1964 Plymouth Valiant that's just popped up on Craigslist for $15,000. Now, I'll be straight with you, this isn't a showroom-ready beauty, but it's got a ton of potential for the right buyer. The seller's been upfront about its fair condition, and it's true this classic has been sitting idle for a few years, but don't let that deter you. This Valiant is packing a 318 V8 motor under the hood, which is a solid power plant with plenty of aftermarket support. It's got an automatic transmission, making it a breeze to cruise once you've got it roadworthy. And here's the kicker, it's a convertible. Perfect for those sunny weekend drives. The odometer shows 81,216 miles, which isn't too shabby for a car of this vintage. It's sporting a red paint job, though I'd wager it could use a refresh to really make it pop. The title's clean, so no worries there, and it's got new tires, which is always a plus. Now, I won't sugarcoat it. This Valiant needs some work. It's a project car through and through, but that's part of the appeal, right? For the right enthusiast, this could be an incredible opportunity to breathe new life into a piece of American automotive history. Just picture it, you behind the wheel of this classic Plymouth, top down, cruising down Main Street. With some elbow grease and dedication, you could have a real head-turner on your hands. So if you've got the skills, the time, and the passion for a good restoration project, this '64 Valiant could be your next great adventure in the world of classic cars. What do you say? Ready to take on this diamond in the rough? 8. We're looking at a real gem, a 1977 Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz that's up for grabs at $8,900. This isn't just any old caddy. We're talking about a piece of American luxury car history in excellent condition. The seller's not exaggerating when they say it runs beautifully. With only 77,429 miles on the clock, this 8-cylinder beast still has plenty of life left in it. What's really impressive is the lack of rust, a common issue for cars of this vintage. The white paint looks clean, and it's sporting a new vinyl top that really completes that classic 70s look. It's not just about looks, though. This Eldorado has had some serious work done. We're talking new tires, new exhaust, and the carburetor was rebuilt just last year. That means you're getting a car that's not only stylish, but also mechanically sound. Now let's talk about what makes this Eldorado special. It's a front-wheel drive coupe, which was pretty innovative for its time. The automatic transmission means smooth cruising, perfect for this luxury land yacht. And with a clean title, you won't have any headaches when it comes to paperwork. For those who might not know, the Biarritz was the top-of-the-line trim for the Eldorado, so you're getting all the bells and whistles Cadillac had to offer in '77. We're talking plush interiors, power everything, and that unmistakable Cadillac presence on the road. At $8,900, this isn't just a car, it's an investment in a piece of automotive history. Whether you're a Cadillac enthusiast or just someone who appreciates a well-maintained classic, this Eldorado deserves a serious look. It's ready to hit the road and turn heads wherever it goes. So, if you've been dreaming of cruising in 70s luxury, this might just be your chance to make that dream a reality. 9. We're taking a look at a real piece of automotive history. A 1964 Chevrolet Corvair that's currently up for grabs at $13,000. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Isn't that the car Ralph Nader criticized? Well, yes, but it's also a unique and innovative piece of American engineering that deserves a second look. This particular Corvair is a coupe model, sporting a sleek red exterior that's sure to turn heads. The seller's listing it as a classic, and they're not wrong. These cars have a dedicated following among collectors and enthusiasts. With a clean title, you won't have to worry about any paperwork headaches if you decide to make this beauty yours. Now I've got to be upfront with you. The listing is a bit light on details. We don't have information about the engine or the exact transmission type, which is listed as Other. This could mean it's the original 4-speed manual or the 2-speed Powerglide automatic, both of which were options for the '64 model year. The lack of specifics here means you'll want to ask the seller for more details, or better yet, see the car in person. The odometer reading isn't provided either, so that's another question you'll want to ask about. These details are crucial in determining the true value and condition of the car. What we do know is that this Corvair has a VIN and a stock number, suggesting it might be coming from a dealership specializing in classics. The price point of $12,995 or $13,000, as you mentioned, indicates that it's likely in good condition, but without more details, it's hard to say for certain. Remember, the Corvair was a revolutionary car for its time, featuring a rear-mounted, air-cooled engine, a rarity in American cars. It's a conversation starter and a unique driving experience all rolled into one. If you're intrigued by this piece of automotive history, I'd recommend giving the seller a call at the number provided. Ask about the engine condition, the transmission type, the mileage, and any restoration work that's been done. And if you can, go see it in person. These cars can be a blast to drive and own, but like any classic, they require some special care and attention. 10. We're looking at a true gem from the golden age of American automobiles, a 1958 Chrysler Imperial that's up for grabs at $15,000. Let me tell you, this isn't just any old car. We're talking about a piece of automotive royalty here. This Imperial is a 2-door hardtop, and according to the seller, it's in excellent condition. Now, I know we've all heard that before, but in this case, it might actually be true. The seller claims it's sporting its original paint and trim, both in great condition. That's pretty rare for a car that's over 60 years old. Under the hood, you'll find a 392 Hemi engine. These engines are legendary for their power and durability, and this one's reportedly had a fresh tune-up. With only 90,000 miles on the odometer, this engine likely has plenty of life left in it. Now let's talk about features. This Imperial's got electric windows and seats. Pretty fancy for 1958. And get this, it's got a push-button automatic transmission. That's not something you see every day, folks. The seller describes this car as a wonderful survivor, and I'm inclined to believe them. They say it drives like a dream, which is impressive for a car of this vintage. It's sitting on new tires, so you won't have to worry about that expense right off the bat. One of the best things about this Imperial is its clean title. That means no hidden surprises when it comes to paperwork. Look, I've seen a lot of classics come and go on Craigslist, but this one stands out. It's not often you find a car from the 50s in this kind of condition, especially at this price point. If you're in the market for a classic that you can actually drive and enjoy, rather than a project car that'll sit in your garage for years, this Imperial deserves a serious look. 11. We're taking a look at a 1984 Chevrolet Corvette that's up for grabs at $5,500. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This one's a bit of a mixed bag, so let's dive in and see what we're dealing with. First off, the seller claims it's in excellent condition, but there are a few issues we need to address. The good news is that it's got a fresh black paint job from 2 years ago, along with reupholstered interior work done at the same time. It's sitting on new tires and rims, which is always a plus. Under the hood, you've got the 350 engine with the unique crossfire injection system. This was only used for a short time, making it a bit of a collector's item for Corvette enthusiasts. Now, let's talk about some of the quirks. The odometer's broken, so the 159,000 miles shown might not be accurate. The AC isn't working, and it's an R12 system, which can be a pain to deal with these days. The passenger side window isn't responding to the switch, and the seller can't get the trunk open. These are definitely issues you'll want to factor into your decision. On the bright side, it's got a clean Nevada title, new shocks, and new brakes. The 700R4 automatic transmission is reportedly very fast. The seller even says it almost broke my neck when shifting at speed. Look, I've got to be honest. This isn't a perfect car by any means, but at $5,500 for a classic Corvette, it could be a great project for the right person. It's got some issues that need addressing, but it also has a lot of potential. If you're handy with cars and looking for a C4 Corvette to tinker with, this might be worth checking out. Remember, this is a 40-year-old car, so it's going to need some TLC. But with its unique crossfire injection system and that fresh paint job, it could be a real head-turner once you get everything sorted out. Just make sure you go in with your eyes open and maybe bring along a mechanic friend if you decide to take a look. 12. We're checking out a real blast from the past. A 1976 Pontiac Le Mans Sport Coupe that's up for grabs at $9,000. Now let me tell you, this isn't your average classic car find. First off, this Le Mans has only 69,000 miles on the clock. That's incredibly low for a car that's pushing 50 years old. The seller claims it's all original, and get this, the AC still blows cold. That's pretty rare for a car of this vintage. Now, I've got to be straight with you, this car isn't perfect. The seller mentions that the previous owner, their grandma by the way, bumped into a couple of things, so there are some small dings and dents. But hey, that just adds character, right? On the plus side, it's got power brakes, discs up front, drums in the rear, and power steering. The seller says it drives great, which is always good to hear. They've also put on brand new wheels and tires, but if you're a purist, don't worry. They're including the original wheels and tires too. Here's where it gets interesting. This Le Mans has been turned into a lowrider. That's not something you see every day on a 76 Pontiac. It definitely gives this classic a unique twist. The seller's been taking good care of it, with receipts for new brakes, fuel lines, wheel bearings, and oil changes. There's some very minor surface rust, but nothing major according to the pictures. One of the best things about this Le Mans is its clean title. It's registered and was smogged just last month, so you shouldn't have any headaches there. Look, at $9,000, this isn't the cheapest classic car out there. But it's also not every day you find a 76 Le Mans with such low mileage and in this condition. If you're into 70s American cars or looking for a unique lowrider, this could be a real gem. 13. We're looking at a real gem, a 1964 Ford Thunderbird that's up for grabs at $14,000. Let me tell you, this isn't your average classic car find. This T-Bird has a story to tell. First off, this beauty was apparently a barn find, or more accurately, a warehouse find in the Bay Area. The previous owner spent a whopping 12 years rebuilding this car from the ground up, and it shows. We're talking a rebuilt engine and transmission with only about 500 miles on them since the work was done. That's practically brand new for a classic like this. The seller's description paints a picture of a car that's been given a new lease on life. It's got new brakes, tires, wheels, a vinyl top, and even a new windshield. Under the hood, you'll find a new Edelbrock carburetor and valve covers, plus new headers and exhaust. They've even added a modern touch with a new electric radiator fan rated at 3,000 CFM. That should keep this bird cool in any weather. Now, let's talk about the looks. This T-Bird is sporting its original Samoa coral paint, which the seller says is in great shape along with the body. The odometer reads 69,983 miles, and it's reportedly working correctly. All the gauges are said to be functioning properly too, which is always a good sign in a classic car. One of the coolest things about this T-Bird is that it comes with a full binder of photos documenting the rebuild process. For a car guy, that's like a history book of automotive resurrection. The seller mentions they were planning to use this for weekend cruises and car shows, which sounds about right for a classic in this condition. It's a shame they have to sell due to relocation, but that means an opportunity for one of you. Look, at $14,000, this isn't the cheapest classic car out there. But considering the extensive rebuild, the low miles since then, and the apparent excellent condition, it could be a great deal for the right buyer. If you're in the market for a turnkey classic that's ready to hit the road or the show circuit, this '64 Thunderbird deserves a serious look. On 14. We're looking at a real beast, a 1971 Plymouth Scamp that's been transformed into a serious performance machine. This isn't your grandpa's Scamp, folks. We're talking about a street-legal rocket that's ready for both cruising and the drag strip. Let's dive into what makes this Scamp special. First off, it's packing a built 383-stroker small block. For those who might not know, a stroker engine is modified to increase displacement, which usually means more power and torque. This isn't just a run-of-the-mill engine swap, it's a purpose-built power plant designed to put some serious rubber on the road. The seller's been pretty tight-lipped about the exact specs, but they've made it clear this car is set up for racing and performance. It's got a roll cage, which not only adds safety, but also stiffens up the chassis for better handling. Race seats have been installed, so you know this thing means business. For the serious racers out there, it's got an aluminum fuel cell. That's a nice touch for weight savings and safety. The exhaust has been upgraded too, which probably means this Scamp has a mean growl to match its bite. Transmission-wise, we're looking at an automatic. While some purists might prefer a manual for a race car, a well-built auto can be incredibly quick and consistent on the strip. Plus, it makes this Scamp more versatile for street use. The seller's even throwing in an extra set of tires. That's a nice bonus, especially if you plan on doing some serious racing where you'll burn through rubber quickly. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This isn't a numbers-matching all-original classic. If that's what you're after, this isn't the car for you. But if you want a classic Mopar body with modern performance upgrades, capable of turning heads on the street and burning up the track, this Scamp deserves a serious look. At $13,000 OBO, it's not cheap, but considering the work that's gone into it, it could be a great deal for the right buyer. As always, I'd recommend seeing it in person and maybe even getting a performance-oriented mechanic to check it out before you commit. 15. We're looking at a piece of 1970s automotive luxury, a 1975 Chrysler Cordoba that's up for grabs at $8,000. Now, I've got to be straight with you, this one's got some quirks, but it might just be the perfect project for the right enthusiast. First off, let's talk about the good stuff. This Cordoba has only 59,000 miles on the clock, which is impressively low for a car that's pushing 50 years old. The seller describes it as a beautiful car in wonderful condition, which is promising. It's got a clean title and an automatic transmission, which is what you'd expect from a luxury cruiser of this era. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This Cordoba is packing a 6-cylinder engine, which is a bit unusual for these cars. Most came with V8s, so this could be a more fuel-efficient version if that's your thing. All right, let's address the elephant in the room. This car has some issues. The seller's been upfront about them, which I appreciate. The steering wheel is loose and needs tightening. That's definitely something you'd want to fix for safety reasons. The AC doesn't work, but hey, it's a 1975 model, so that's not too surprising. The good news is that it's set up for a new unit if you want to add one. Here's a quirk that might take some getting used to. You need to press down on the gas pedal harder than usual. The seller suggests this can be fixed by switching to a shorter throttle cable. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something to keep in mind. Look, I've got to be honest, this isn't a perfect car by any means, but at $8,000, it could be a great entry point into classic car ownership. The seller mentions seeing similar models going for $10,000, so there might be some room for negotiation here. If you're a fan of 1970s American luxury cars, or if you've always wanted to own a piece of automotive history, complete with rich Corinthian leather, as the famous ads used to say, this Cordoba could be worth checking out. Just make sure you're prepared for a bit of tinkering to get everything running smoothly. 16. We're looking at a 1971 Plymouth Fury that's up for grabs at $2,500. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This one's a bit of a project, but it could be a diamond in the rough for the right person. Let's start with the good news. It's a running, drivable classic with a clean title. That's not always a given with cars of this vintage. It's packing a V8 engine, which is always fun, and it's got an automatic transmission for easy cruising. Now, let's talk about the challenges. And there are a few. The seller's honest about the car being in fair condition, and they're not kidding. There's a dent in the front passenger side quarter panel, so you'll need to factor in some bodywork. The interior needs a complete overhaul, and you're looking at a new set of tires too. Here's the big issue. There's a problem with the fuel system. The car will run for 20-30 minutes before the fuel line clogs. The seller says it can be blown out to get it running again, but that's definitely something you'll want to address properly. The odometer has rolled over, so we don't know the true mileage. Given the condition, it's safe to assume this Fury has seen its fair share of road. One more thing to consider. The car's currently in Idlewild, and the seller suggests towing it down the hill. That tells me they're not entirely confident in its ability to make a long trip under its own power. Look, at $2,500, this isn't a turnkey classic ready for cruise night. It's a project car that needs some serious TLC. But if you're handy with a wrench and looking for a challenge, this could be a fun opportunity. These old Furies can be pretty cool when they're fixed up. Just remember, you'll need to factor in the cost of repairs and probably a tow truck to get it home. If you're up for the challenge and have a soft spot for old Plymouths, this might be worth checking out. 17. We're looking at a real gem. A 1984 Chevrolet Monte Carlo that's up for grabs at $11,000. Now, I've got to tell you, this isn't your average 80s survivor. This Monte Carlo has been given some serious love. First off, let's talk about the condition. The seller claims it's excellent, and based on the list of new parts, I'm inclined to believe them. This Monte Carlo has only 73,151 original miles on the clock, which is impressively low for a car pushing 40 years old. Under the hood, you've got the 5.0L V8 engine, which has been recently steam cleaned. That's always a good sign. It shows the owner cares about presentation and maintenance. The transmission is described as smooth and strong, which is what you want to hear for a cruiser like this. Now, let's talk about the work that's been done, because it's extensive. We're looking at new valve cover gaskets, power steering components, fuel system parts, ignition system upgrades, and a whole lot more. They've even replaced the battery, which is still under warranty. The cooling system has been overhauled with a new thermostat, hoses, and water pump. New belts, new tires. The list goes on and on. One of the coolest things about this Monte Carlo is that it still has its original interior. Finding an 80s car with a well-preserved interior can be tough, so that's a big plus. The seller is offering to meet at their mechanic's shop, which is a great sign. It shows they're confident in the work that's been done and are willing to let you have it inspected. Look, at $11,000, this isn't the cheapest '84 Monte Carlo out there. But considering the low mileage, the extensive list of new parts, and the apparent excellent condition, it could be a great deal for the right buyer. If you're looking for a turnkey classic from the '80s that's ready to hit the road or the show circuit, this Monte Carlo deserves a serious look. As always, I'd recommend seeing it in person and maybe even taking up the seller's offer to meet at the mechanic's shop. But if everything checks out, this could be your chance to own a piece of '80s Chevy history that's been meticulously maintained. 18. We're looking at a 1974 Chevy Nova that's up for grabs at $8,500. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This one's a project car through and through, but it's got some serious potential for the right enthusiast. Let's start with the basics. This Nova's packing a 350 V8 engine, which is always a good foundation for a muscle car build. It's got an automatic transmission and rear-wheel drive, as you'd expect from a classic American coupe. The seller's honest about the condition, listing it as fair, and that's probably being generous. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This Nova's already got some performance upgrades. We're talking a 4-barrel carb, gear drive, electronic ignition, electric fuel pump, and headers. That's a solid start for anyone looking to build a street machine. But let's not sugarcoat it. This car needs work. The seller admits it needs carburetor adjustments, probably a new alternator, and some suspension work. They drove it from Gig Harbor to Allen when they got it, so it runs, but it's not exactly in daily driver condition. The odometer shows 80,000 miles, but it's rolled over, so the true mileage is anyone's guess. The body's blue, but we don't know much about its condition. Given the overall state of the car, I'd expect it needs some TLC in the looks department too. Look, at $8,500, this isn't a bargain basement beater, but it's not priced like a fully restored classic either. It's sitting right in that sweet spot for a project car with good bones and some upgrades already done. If you're a DIY type looking for a father-son project, as the seller suggests, or just someone who loves wrenching on old muscle cars, this Nova could be a great starting point. It's got a clean title, which is always a plus for a project car. Just remember, you're not buying a finished product here. You're buying potential and a to-do list. But if you've got the skills, the time, and the passion, this '74 Nova could be transformed into one sweet ride. As always, I'd recommend seeing it in person, and maybe even bringing along a mechanic who knows old Chevys before you commit. But if everything checks out, and you're up for a challenge, this could be your ticket to classic muscle car ownership. 19. We're looking at a 1985 Chevy Corvette that's up for grabs at $6,850. Now I've got to tell you, this one's a bit of a mixed bag, but it might just be the perfect ride for the right buyer. First off, let's talk about what makes this '85 Vette stand out. The seller claims it's in excellent condition, which is pretty impressive for a car pushing 40 years old. It's got a custom paint job with matching interior seats and carpet. That's not something you see every day, and it could be a real head-turner if done right. Under the hood, you've got the classic Corvette V8 engine, paired with an automatic transmission. This setup should give you that smooth, powerful ride that Corvettes are known for. With rear-wheel drive, you're getting the authentic sports car experience. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the mileage. At 130,000 miles, it's not exactly low for a collector car. However, the seller describes this as low for the year, which might be a bit of a stretch. That said, if it's been well maintained, a C4 Corvette can easily handle those miles. The seller claims it runs great, which is always good to hear. They also mention its price to sell, and at $6,850, it's certainly on the more affordable end for a C4 Corvette in excellent condition. Here's where I've got to be straight with you. While the seller describes the condition as excellent, you'll want to verify that in person. Sometimes excellent can be subjective, especially with older cars. The custom paint job and interior could be a hit or miss depending on personal taste and quality of work. Look, if you're in the market for a C4 Corvette and don't mind a car with some miles on it, this could be a great opportunity. The price point makes it accessible for someone looking to get into Corvette ownership without breaking the bank. As always, I'd recommend seeing it in person and maybe even getting a professional inspection before you commit. Pay close attention to the custom work and make sure it's up to your standards. 20. We're looking at a 1971 Ford Ranchero that's up for grabs at $3,000. Now, I've got to be straight with you. This one's a project car through and through, but it could be a diamond in the rough for the right person. Let's start with the good stuff. This Ranchero's packing a 351 Cleveland V8 with a 2-barrel carb, paired with a C6 automatic transmission. That's a solid powertrain combo that's known for reliability and decent power. The seller says it starts and runs with a jump, which is promising. Now here's where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean challenging. The battery's dead, so you'll need to factor that in. More importantly, it needs brake work before it can be driven. The seller's not mincing words here. They're telling you to bring a trailer. That's honesty I can appreciate. On the plus side, it's got brand new tires and wheels that were apparently a $1,600 investment about 3 years ago. They've got no miles on them, which is a nice bonus. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. Rust. The seller mentions rust holes in the floors that have been patched with sheet metal. That's a red flag, folks. You'll want to give this a thorough inspection to see how extensive the rust issue really is. The odometer shows 99,929 miles, but it's rolled over, so the true mileage is anyone's guess. Given the condition, it's safe to assume this Ranchero has seen its fair share of road. Look, at $3,000, this isn't a turnkey classic ready for cruise night. It's a project car that needs some serious TLC. The seller's invested almost $5,500 into it, so there might be some other improvements we don't know about. If you're handy with a wrench, not afraid of some body work, and have always wanted a classic Ranchero to restore, this could be a fun opportunity. Just remember, you'll need to factor in the cost of repairs and a trailer to get it home. As always, I'd recommend seeing it in person before you commit. If you can get the seller to respond, that is. They're pretty clear about not answering emails, so you'll need to call or text.